Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. We have a wonderful guest, and I'm going to let Aurora introduce herself to you. But as we do here at Threads of Enlightenment, once we are visited by our sages, as I call them, the teachers that give us and feed us wisdom and the principles that will take us to the next level, I am so excited to have her here because I cannot wait to hear her story and her journey as to how she created what she's about to tell you guys that she does. Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, Aurora. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you, Ken, for having me here. I am super excited. I love your podcast. And
Thank
so
you. Thank you.
I'm coming also as a fan. Okay, my story. Wow.
Oh, wait a minute. I,
um,
I want you to
yeah,
tell me your world that you created first. I want you
the
to
word that
tell
I
us,
created. Okay. Okay, the
yeah,
word I
all
created.
the fun things that you are doing today because I want the audience to see that they can do great things just like you
Yeah.
if they listen to you. And once they listen to you, they can then take some of those principles that you use to create. And so I want you to tell us this beautiful world because I know I've been reading about it. Tell them about this beautiful world that you have created and the work that you're doing, and then we are going to go back and find out how did you get there.
So I feel very, very lucky because what I do is I help people reconnect with their own innate wisdom. And a lot of the
Hmm.
time, the way we get there is by talking about careers, specific career change, or growing their business. But really, that's the entry point, and the level at which we work together is a much deeper level.
Hmm.
So I do that by working one on one with people. And I actually started this year to do something very different, which is 6 day of intensive coaching. So six coaching sessions over 6 days where we really
Nice.
um, get to unlock, that space inside. And I also do group programs and I bring people together right now only online, before also in person,
Hmm.
so that we can explore this deeper transformation and reconnect with each other and meet new people. And there's something very, very special that happens is that in that co-created space.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So you are working with people in groups, you're working one on one, the 6 week program. I love those type programs because you get a chance to really peel away the inner workings of the mind as to how the person arrived where they are. And I tell people, and I love to say that we are creators, and
Mm.
the world that you live in today, you have created it. And so
Mm.
you are now looking into that world and you're saying, I don't like that world. I want to create something else. And that's when you get a chance to sit down with people like Aurora. So, Aurora, you are this sage. And I know you didn't get there just by, one morning you got up and you're here. So I want you to go
Yeah.
back because most of us, and I always instruct people to pay attention to breadcrumbs that are being placed in our life. And the only reason why we do not see or know that the breadcrumbs are there is because we are not aware. We're not living in a state of awareness. And so we usually miss those breadcrumbs until we have a situation where it's just madness. Our world is upside down and we are totally in a space of darkness. But I told them, don't panic because the darkness is where the creators are creating. So that's where we start. So I want you to go back to your beginnings and tell
Mm.
us about this young woman that was born in Italy and she makes her way to the States. And I want you to now introduce us to this young woman and then we start our journey.
Wow. You know, um, It's really moving to me to think, oh, when I was much younger in Italy, I grew up in a town in northeastern Italy, and it was my experience was one where I always felt there was something wrong with me or that I wasn't enough.
Hmm.
Um, and I really carried that feeling for a long time. So I wanted to get away from it, and I was lucky enough to be able to come to California. And I originally came to study filmmaking. Then I continued as a photographer. That's what I used to do.
Hmm.
And here I feel like I started to really learn and expand my mind over how to maybe overcome in myself those feelings. But I didn't get it for a long time. I still was caught up in ideas of if I get something from outside, then I'll be able to
Hmm.
fix myself.
Hmm.
So for me as an artist, there was a really big pressure. If I can be a professional artist and somebody will pay for me, then it means I'm good enough, right?
Hmm.
Or if I make enough money, or if people like me more, and some of this stuff was unconscious, some was very conscious. And my first experience with coaching was the kind of coaching where again you are trying to fix yourself, you're trying to fix your life, you're looking at what's
Hmm.
wrong and you approach it and reframing it or changing.
Yes.
The amazing thing with that is that at a certain point, I started to really achieve things I wanted, right?
Hmm.
I worked as a
Yeah.
professional artist, then I changed careers and I had a pretty good, career in marketing. I started to make a lot more money, you know, but my sense of having to fix myself and my sense of having to control things only
Hmm.
increased.
Hmm.
For a little bit, I had the high of I've achieved
Yeah.
something, and then something else out of my control would happen, and then I would again be thrown back into these feelings of there's something lacking within me, and it would get worse, right? Because then I would start counting
Hmm.
them and see every time I cannot get out, and the
Yeah.
inner critic would just. So at the end of 2015, I read this book called The Surrender Experiment, and it
Hmm.
was really an autobiography about surrendering to the flow of life and really starting to, Michael Singer, the author, at some point decided I'm gonna be happy no matter what, and I don't
Yeah.
have to control my life so much. It's not like I had never heard that before, Ken. Like I had
Hmm.
heard this stuff before.
Yeah.
But I think because I had achieved the outside things, I
Hmm.
think I was ready to really hear that message, you know.
Yeah.
And I had always had this idea that I wanted to work more with people in a deeper way. But my mind would always come in. But how are you gonna make money? What's the business plan?
Yeah.
And when I decided, look, I'm just gonna start living my life from a place of I'm okay, everything is okay, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
start doing what I like to do without trying to make it into something,
Hmm.
my life changed.
I
Then my
love
life
that stuff.
changed.
See, we walk into principles sometime and not knowing how we do it. Jesus has a saying. He said, and let those who have ears let them hear. And so,
Mm.
what do you mean by that? So you just said it. You were just ready, and that message that you had, I always, I when you're reading a book, this is how I tell people: when you're reading a book, you're having a private meeting with that author. You
Mm.
are one on one. He or she is sitting with you in your living room, in your space of safety and comfort. And once you are at that place, you're able to, as you said, hear. And once you heard, hearing demands that you do something, and you stepped out and you started what they call the walk of faith, as far as, you know what, I am just going to do this, because the intellectual part of us starts focusing, and rightfully so. We want the security before we do anything. We want the money so that I can, once I have the money and I'm making the money, then I can, oh, I'll do this. And so the process, though, is actually the other way. And so, as we begin to do what we love, Aurora, like you just started telling us, it's not work anymore. And that sting of a 9 to 5 or the drudgery of getting up doing something that you're not in love with, that painfulness is not there. There's this joy. And I believe that that's one of the things that causes that force to pull the people that we need in our lives, the situations that we need in our lives to move us to the next place. And so I love the fact that you had started your journey with two of the main things, and you just mentioned just by speaking about the faith, just trusting and moving beyond the head, as we were saying, we talked earlier between the difference between the head and the heart. And when you move by your heart, trust me, things change. And you and I had a conversation. I talk about uh, the fears, and I'm going to get into some of that. You talk about it. These are some of the roadblocks that keep our blessings from us. And I'm going to ask you about some of those because we have to have conversations with them and
Mm.
revisit them, and they are in love with us, and so they hate to leave because they just love us so much. And so we have to learn how to sever that relationship as we move from one space to the other. So here you are, you started this, you make the leap, and you now begin. Talk to me as far as, because I know those thoughts that are coming to you saying, what am I doing? But I think I'm doing it. What am I doing? But I think I'm doing it. How did you learn to manage that part of your walk once you decided to go?
That's a really good question. Actually, nobody has ever asked me that question that way. I think what you said, a leap of faith, was really key. I saw for myself something, and I saw what was not working, and the
Hmm.
controlling was not working.
Yeah.
The fear was not working. The
Hmm.
outside, I'm going to find my security outside, was not working. So I decided it wasn't, it just made sense to me
Hmm.
that I had to find that inside. And I had to, I almost felt like it was getting off an addiction,
Hmm.
like I'm addicted to this thinking and
Yep.
I have to get off it. And so what I didn't do was trying to solve that problem because that's how I
Yeah.
lived all my life. And it had worked,
Hmm.
in many ways it worked for me. So it
Yeah.
does work.
Uh-huh.
So what I started to do was simply things like if I feel like doing something, I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
And if I need money, I'm going to say yes to a gig that pays me for it. Like I started
Yeah.
to live really from that, tuning into myself and tuning into the present
Hmm.
and not getting into the control. It
Yeah.
was very hard because then the fear would
Oh,
come
yeah.
up. And I had a support system, so
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that really helped me. I got really deeply into meditation so that
Yeah.
I could get back to a place that was behind those fears.
Yes.
um, and then the process fed itself because I started to feel better.
Hmm.
I started to have a sense. Look, if you had told me this 10 years ago, and especially if you had told me this when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, when I came here, and you had told me safety and security come from the inside, um, I would have been intellectually, oh, that's a nice thought, but no.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not believe that was possible. But the more I started to experience letting go of my own addictive
Yes.
thinking of the outside,
Yes.
this inner sense of peace and love and
Hmm.
okayness and the absence of fear, uh,
Yeah.
it was already there. Like I could feel that if I could get behind the conditioning, it was just
Hmm.
there.
It was
So
there.
this
Yeah.
is why, you know, I started with like I want to help people change careers, and now I'm like I still help people change careers, but my what I say now I do is like I help you get to that space. When you
Yes.
get to that space, to me it feels like a miracle, and yet everybody has it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not
It's
one
this.
person.
Yeah. It's you talk about meditation, and that was your conduit to begin to grow. And people need to understand the power that is in the meditation aspect of your personal growth. The meditation, I tell them not to worry about what the classic form of meditation where you sit down and meditate. There's thousands of ways to meditate. Walking is meditation. Running can be meditation. Cooking can be meditation. So dancing could be meditation. Whatever works for you, you need to find that tool and meditate. And once you begin to meditate, you begin to take ownership. You begin to take ownership of your thoughts. You begin to take ownership of your actions. You begin to take ownership of everything what you say and do. But as you begin to meditate, that is where the I say it's the enlightenment begins as far as the acceptance of who you are, the loving of the self, the questioning of the self, the answering of the self. You can't lie to yourself. So you're in this space of absolute truth. And the principle is that the truth will set you free. And so, as you begin to become truthful with yourself and honest with yourself from that place of meditation, Aurora, everything starts looking like it's going to be a good day.
I love so much of what you said, and this is why I love this podcast because we're so aligned. I think this idea of meditation is so important because a lot of the time people think it's a technique. It's not a
Yeah.
technique. It's
Hmm.
just a path to get to that space. And so I
Yes.
call that space, sometimes I refer to it as the self, but with a big S versus the little s, the little self.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I call it source. And
Yes.
so I want to talk about source for a second, but first is the idea of meditation. So, like, meditation across the world, across cultures, across time, different people have found different ways to get to that space. And at
Yes.
different times, so maybe the way your brain works, whatever, like you'll
Hmm.
find a way to get there.
Yeah.
And I think when you get that, then you understand that. For example, I tried silent meditation many
Hmm.
times, it never worked for me. I was immediately able to access it with chanting.
Hmm.
I didn't even know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
somehow. So I think that's really important to understand that your goal is not to meditate, your goal is to get to that space. And any type of path that will take you to it, I call it meditation, you call it meditation as a broad
Yeah. Yes.
term.
Term.
But
Yeah.
really that's important, right? You calibrate on, am I starting to access that? That's the calibration. But source, so this deeper place inside, so much of what you said is so beautiful because, and it's hard to explain it with words, it's very hard to explain it with words. It's where there's the truth but with a capital T.
Yeah.
And it's much smarter than our intellect,
Hmm.
so that we are used to go into life by rules or by looking for answers outside. Like, for example,
Yes.
do I quit my job before having another job, or do I start a business on the side, or should I wait 3 years, make this much money, and people look
Hmm.
for these answers as if there is a rule, as if somebody can tell me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. But that place inside of you is connected with everything, can feel, can there's a knowing there that is
Yes.
beyond what our little mind can grasp.
Hmm.
And so when you have a practice of sitting with it, you will know if you should
Yes.
just quit your job or wait to build your business or save so much
Yeah.
money, um, you will get that nobody can tell you what your path is,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that
Yeah.
that inner knowing will guide you step by step. And then you can put your strategic mind in service of
Yeah.
it. You know,
Uh-huh.
you decide to create a business, you're gonna like figure out your taxes and all that kind of stuff, right? Like we all have
Yeah.
to do that
Yeah.
work, but it's in service. It's in service because
Yes.
it's just not as smart, you know.
Yeah, it is. I say it is the space between the natural and the supernatural. And whatever, as you mentioned, some people is chanting, some people is running. I've spoken to people that it was surfing, it was in nature. Whatever it is, find your place. I know one person was music, listening to music that brought him into the space of meditation. It is that bridge between the natural and the supernatural. And once you have connected, you then, life begins to become this adventurous thing that you're looking at something greater than you that you can tap into to ask for guidance, wisdom, all the things that are necessary for you to now get up from that space. In my meditation, I would control my day in my meditation space. So when I got up and I began to move, and things happen, which they should and they would and they will, but that doesn't interrupt what I have created. Would not allow it to come into that energy that I've put around my mind and my inner being and my body. I allow that situation to come, and I let my higher self, my higher mentality, my spirit man handle that. And that my staff would, when I worked, my staff would come to me and ask me, why don't I respond to something? And I tell them, not now. I would take a few minutes, and I would go and meditate, and I'd come back and they would ask me, how did you think of that? How did you do that? Because the answer, Aurora, is inside of us. It's not anywhere outside. If it came from outside, my God, we wouldn't have millionaires killing themselves, would we?
That's right. That's actually, yeah. Such a simple thing to see once somebody points to it. I mean, obviously, anybody with whatever you think you lack, if they have it, they should be fine, right?
Hmm.
And then if you look
Yeah,
around, that's not the case.
that's not the
Yeah.
case.
If something is on the outside that you need and the answer is it's on the outside, it's usually very easy to get, like
Yeah.
you can
Hmm.
Google it.
Yeah.
So the first clue should be, why am I still stuck if I have the information?
Yeah.
you know
There you go.
and
Hmm.
that's a clue that it's an inside and not an outside thing. um there was something else as you were talking that really came to me, is that the more I let go of my own need to always control, is that I also got very comfortable with the not knowing.
Yes.
So I also started to practice this. I don't have to force a decision if I don't know yet.
Hmm.
I can
Yeah.
just I can just be, well, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
And then something will come to me. Sometimes it would be, I need more research. I need to, maybe it
Hmm.
is an outside answer. Sometimes it
Yeah.
will come to me, it's not the right time, and it's not the right time
Hmm.
to make a decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes, spontaneously at some point, the decision will come. I started to trust more and more my process. And so we all have a process.
Hmm.
I think we're conditioned to question this process and to, again, it's the whole fixing, right? And
Hmm.
I am more and more becoming more radical to that, to the point that, for example, if I feel uncomfortable, my tendency is still to be like, why am I feeling uncomfortable? I should feel comfortable. And now instead, I'm like, I'm curious why I feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll feel
Yes.
uncomfortable for a while and see what
Yes.
wisdom is there. You
Yes.
know, it's transformative, this practice. It's very radical and it's transformative. I'm a huge fan of Alan Watts. So anybody that works with
Hmm.
me or talks to me at some point, I'm very likely to mention Alan Watts. I was listening to one of his lectures, And he said this beautiful thing. He said, we say we come into the world, but we come from the world. And he
Mm-hmm.
points to this idea of really, nothing in nature is here, and it's not needed. Right? That's the whole
Mm-hmm.
point of, like, you cannot just
Yes.
bring, an animal to a different place and an environment. Like, everything will move, around the same thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot take something outside in the environment. And yet we think that that's not true for us.
Yeah.
See, we live in this hallucination that somehow maybe I don't fit in. Maybe there's not something
Mm-hmm.
for me that I like to do that I'll be okay doing.
Yeah.
How is that possible? How could you be here if we didn't need you?
Yeah. The power of the beauty of individuality, the fact that we are so unique, so purposefully put together. It is amazing how we allow our thoughts, the programming of our grandparents, our schools, our parents, our friends, society, the programming as to how we ought to look, how we ought to dress, how we ought to respond. Don't talk this way. All of these programmings that we have been conditioned. And I have a term that I use that is conditioned response. We have been so conditioned that we respond a certain way. And I always use the example of you're in your car driving and you're just having a good time listening to your music. You happen to look into your rear view mirror. There's a cop car behind you, and you hit the brake. And why? Because you've been programmed. And so your first response is to hit the brake. Well, why not just keep driving? You're not programmed that way. So we respond the same way in how we approach life, how we approach the things that come in our path because of how we are programmed. And so here you are asking these questions in your quiet space. And now I want you to talk about, or some of those for a lack of a better word, the demons that you had to overcome. Some of the things that were short circuit your process, your I know you mentioned some of your fear of stepping out, the security aspect of it. That's commonplace with everyone with their security. What other um, entities did you had to sit down and have that conversation with and say, "Wait a minute, we need to part friends"?
Mm. I think for me, the security was really the biggest thing. I, in general, always feel like I can learn things,
Hmm.
but you know, uh, I I'm really alone. I haven't had any kind of family support for a very, very long time. And also being an
Hmm.
immigrant in another country, although I've been here now since I was 19 years old, so for a long time, there's always a feeling that you don't quite understand how things work.
Yeah.
That there's something that comes from you grew up in a place where you pick up certain signals and certain, I don't know, even things taken for granted, that when you move to a new place, it can be very disorienting and for a long
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
So I had a very deep, deep fear of, I'm alone, and if something happened to me, nobody's gonna help me. And it
Hmm.
wasn't. I mean, it was a fear, but also it was kind of true. I mean,
Yeah.
I could not. I had to find source. Some people might call it God. It depends on your
Hmm.
religion, right? But really,
Yeah.
I found that actually there was a place in me that was connected to everything, and everything came from it, from this
Yes.
connection, this energy, this thing that infuses everything. So I was never really alone. It would take
Yes.
another shape.
Yes.
I had a moment years ago before I changed my life this way. The first, it wasn't the first glimpse, but I think the first glimpse that was really like, wow, like a really huge thing was I was in this group program, like a communication coaching kind of group program, and you had to do this exercise of staring into somebody's eyes for a long
Hmm.
time in silence. So there was a group of of us. And in this group of us, there was a guy that I found a little bit creepy. I didn't know him at all, but I had this a little bit of this creepy feeling. And
Mhm.
when they said pick a partner, he was standing right next to me. And he said, "Do you want to partner up?" And I really didn't want to stare in this guy's eyes, but I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So I'm there. And of course, I started with my creepy feeling. I stare into his eyes. And after a while, Ken, I just had this knowing that we were one, and whatever feeling I had was I don't know, it's almost like I can't express it with words, but it was like it was of the world, but there was something else
Yes.
behind it that was there in
Yeah.
everybody. And I think it's because
Mhm.
I paired up with somebody that I had some resistance to, that I was
Mhm.
able to access that. And so I don't know
Yeah.
this guy like at all, like he might have been
Yeah,
the
yeah.
most wonderful person or not. I don't know. But at that moment, I knew for sure that we're all one. And no matter who's in front of me and no matter what to do, there is that space in them. And that
Yeah.
really changed me at a fundamental level where I started to, you know, even before I made the commitment to, again, take this path, I really changed the way I was in the world.
Mhm.
That was a very, very powerful um, moment for me. And I think that's the best that I can explain. So the security thing for me was the biggest thing because it was also, a practical thing if I could
Yeah,
accept with
yeah.
anybody, and it's also very culturally accepted as a reason. So if you say I'm
Mhm.
very afraid of not making enough money, so I'm gonna just stick with a job that is not good for me
Yeah.
and kills my soul, a
Mhm.
whole lot of people will be like, yeah, because you should be
Yeah.
responsible.
Yeah.
Right, so we got a lot of also agreement on this security comes
Yeah.
from the outside. So I don't want people here to hear that then I got to this point and then, oh, now I'm rich and famous. And no, like, it's
Yeah.
really funny because in some ways, some of the outside thing, I was making a lot more money being a marketing director. It's a lot easier to make money
Yeah. Yeah.
um, than starting my coaching business. And yet, I feel so much safer now,
Yeah. Wow. That is
you know?
awesome. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
awesome to come from that space. And again, because we are programmed that way to think that the 9 to 5 is the way to go. And that once we are removed from that 9 to 5, then our world seems to crumble. But there are many people and many powerful people came out of when they lost their jobs. Great companies came out of that. So it can't be all the answers as to the 9 to 5. You have to find the piece that makes you happy. They are gifted lawyers. I've seen gifted police officers. I've seen, and they love that. And that is, they can still grow and become a better human spirit by utilizing all the different tools and so forth that we all put together to grow. And they can still be a police officer while they do these things. And so it is, you need to find what it is for you, because we are, we were talking about, we're so specifically beautiful. And I always say that we are an endangered species. You are an individual that is an endangered species. You're one of a kind. And when you leave, there is nothing like you ever again is going to show up. So you need to be very special. You need to love yourself. You need to be kind to yourself by saying good things and encouraging yourself. So here you are now, and you have this internal shift when you had this meeting and this sitting with this person, and now you begin to govern your actions and your life a different way. Now, how did it propel you to start your business, start these classes? How did you move from all of that now to begin to give birth to these things?
Well, first of all, let me say that really changed me fundamentally, where I really started to see how much which again, we all know this intellectually, but I think it was one of those moments where I really see that I brought a lot of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
into relationships,
Yeah.
into meetings,
Mm-hmm.
into being with another person,
Yeah.
and how much of that was just me, you
Yeah.
know. So that was a really big shift. And when I started my work, I started very slowly, and I started, as I mentioned before, purposefully saying I'm not going to plan on a business, I'm not going to plan on all these things. So I didn't want to fall into my addicting, controlling
Mm-hmm.
security thing. So I had some people that wanted, my idea at the time was I want to help people change careers because I changed careers a couple of times and I thought I could
Yeah.
help. And so a couple of friends asked me, and I always had people asking me, but I would always say no, because I didn't have a plan. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then I asked them if they could show up for, I don't remember how many times together. And I sort of prepared what I would want to cover. And then that evening, I was at a meetup completely unrelated to this. And they asked me what I was doing. And I said, I'm not sure yet. I'm surrendering to the flow of life, whatever. And I'm also helping a couple of friends, changing careers.
Uh-huh.
And two people at this meetup said, oh, great. Can I come too? And
Wow.
I honestly, the old me would have been like, I don't know you. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't have a plan. No. But the new me, the one that I
Mm-hmm.
committed to this, was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to try being this person who's not always controlling. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Wow.
started to live from that place, and it organically took shape. And
Yeah.
so here's a really big distinction when you live from this place. I was making decisions, right? I was having ideas and making that happen. Obviously, I said yes to these friends. I said yes to these
Mm-hmm.
people I didn't know, and I spent time creating things. But because these decisions did not come from the small self, but they
Mm-hmm.
came from the really from source, from the deep self,
Yeah.
they didn't
Yeah.
they didn't feel difficult, they didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
conflicted, they didn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
um the more I live from this, the more, if you ask me, oh, how did you make this happen, I have even almost trouble remembering, because I wasn't constantly in a war with myself over what I should
Yeah.
do. I
Yeah.
was in, this makes sense, right? So
I
in
use
Taoism, yeah. No, no, go ahead.
I use this example, Aurora, and my background is Christian background, and I believe we are creators just like God. Because I had asked a set of preachers, where was the creature of man when God was creating the earth? And they couldn't answer it because I knew how they were thinking. They were limit thinking men. God didn't put the creature on the side, and then when he finished, then he picked him up and put him in a body. The creature was inside of God, creating with him, calling those things that are not as though they were, calling it, bringing all of it. And so that is why I say that to people, we are creators. And when you are creating, there is no, I use the example of God. When he was creating, there was no stress. He was just, let there be light, let there this, I need that. And so when you are creating the same, there's no stress. You don't feel stressful about what you're doing. The conversation happened. Yes, come on, you're welcome. And so you are creating. It didn't look at it at the time, but you were creating this world that you have today from that. Yes, come and sit down. You're welcome. And now you have this beautiful creation that you had started to put together. And creation, my point is, creation is organic. It is not a stressful thing. If you are in stress, it is not right. Something is off. So
Mm.
creator never, Aurora, fight with the material, because he or she have the material already that is necessary to manifest what they want to manifest. So but when you're in strife, there is something wrong. And so I love the fact that you're talking about it happened organically. Why? Because you're actually in your creative mode.
Which I think it's our natural state, really,
I believe so.
and right. And
Yeah.
we sort of made this thing up that you have to be an artist to be creative, or you have to be an author, or you have to
Oh,
be a coach or whatever. We made it up, but really it doesn't
mm-hmm.
matter what you do. The
No,
creativity is just our natural state.
it's who you
We're
are.
we're in this yeah,
Yeah, it's who you
yeah.
are. I think we just, again, society will take us and form us, whether it's society through generalized society, through church, through all the other institutions that are out there that will depro or program us, and we spend time with our personal growth deprogramming us and falling in love. And that's why it's such a beautiful thing, because I am falling in love with myself more and more and more and more as I move from one space to the other. And 10 years from now, we're going to look back, or we're going to say, oh my God, you remember, Ken, when we had that conversation? We were really, uh, we were trying our best over there. And so in 10 years, in a day tomorrow, in 10 minutes, because we're having this conversation, we are growing, and that to me is just the most beautiful thing.
Well, let me ask you something if you had the same experience. Because I also love in your book you talk about self-loving.
Yes.
It's sort of like which side of the thread do you pull, right? The more you experience this deep place of love within yourself, the more you love yourself, but also the capacity of loving other people expands,
Yes. It
right?
is the
So
principle.
right. So this moment where I had that strong moment of oneness with this person, I felt so much love. Like, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, it just makes me cry even think about it now. Like
Yes.
I felt so much love. And if we could, if everybody could get to that place, which we
Yeah.
have already, right? If everybody, the more we can have experience, I mean, the whole world would change, right? And
There
so
is a
sometimes,
Go ahead. There's a
yeah.
go ahead. There's you when you were talking. You
Yeah.
reminded me of this scripture that Jesus said, and it's the principle. He says, and you are talking about it all the time, and you are saying with the source. So here is what he says. They came to him and they asked him, "What is the greatest commandment?" And he says to them, "This is it: to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself." And so as you are having this relationship with your source, you are what is happening to you. He said it, love. So this love relationship between you and your source then causes you now to look at your neighbor and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so as you begin to this process of growing, the pinnacle of it all, Aurora, is for us to become servants and to step out and then walk in this space of love.
Yes, yes, yes. And what happens to your neighbor when he feels that you love them no matter what?
No kidding.
They can feel love for themselves, right? That's why
Yeah.
you pull one thread or the other,
Yeah.
whether you first access it because you do deep practices on yourself and you get there, and so at some point it rises, or whether you have an experience of somebody so loving that even when
Mm-hmm.
you're not being yourself, they
Yeah.
love and accept you. That's gonna do something to your
Oh
ability
yeah.
to get there, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all one process, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just which side we get to it.
We're
I you know The more I experience this, the more I live into this, the more I really feel like it's the answer to everything. Not to sound cheesy, but
yeah.
there's such inner healing for everybody around when you're in that space and you just feel
Yes.
it. And I've never met somebody who, you know, felt this way and was in that space and wanted to hurt another human being, and wanted to do
Yeah.
something to really cause more
yeah.
harm or separation. There's just not such a thing,
Yeah.
you know? So imagine if we could just have workplaces and interactions, I don't know, at the store and with our families from
Yeah,
here. I think that's really what
think,
I dedicated, what I'm dedicating myself to, because I just see it. I just live it.
and
It's the most
that's
wonderful
the
thing.
purpose. Yeah, that's the purpose of Threads of Enlightenment. Is the last chapter of my book is about becoming a servant to people and wanting to love them from the space of loving yourself, and to see them move from a place of not loving themselves, from that space to when you deal with some of your clients and you see them make that transformation, the joy that it brings to you, the grin from one end to another. Not just, I think the grin is from the inside, and we just see it on the face, but that grin is from the inner man, and you have this joy that you see as other human spirit is in that space of loving themselves and then carrying that light on from one to another. This is what we're all about, this beautiful space. And I think that if we can practice that, what a world that would be. What a world that would be, you know, not to look at someone because of their color, um, not because of their upbringing, not because of anything, no judgment at all. If we can look as you did with that gentleman, you came with your preconceived ideas from whatever place that came from. But when you looked into his eyes and you looked into the spirit of that individual, the the walls were gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the
It was
color, the fear,
really,
all of it. You know,
yeah.
man,
Yeah.
yeah,
I really
that
saw it
is
was, my doing. It was quite
well.
amazing.
So here you are today, Aurora. You have created this beautiful space.
You got me all teary eyed here. Good thing it's just audio.
You have created this wonderful world, and I know as creators, we are never stationary. Once a creator has been awoken, there is no
Mm,
stopping that creator, because we realize that we can make things different, and that creator will always be creating every day, every day, every day. So here you are, you have created this, and you are now teaching people to become creators, looking in themselves and pulling out their gifts and beginning to move forward. Paint a picture. Here I am, I've come to you, I'm all messed up. Um, my job. I want, I love you. Love your repurpose, your purpose. That is focusing on the job piece. But I know you have this spiritual piece. So here I am. I'm a total mess. I show up. Aurora, help me.
well, I would say, look, I have
How?
a good, yeah, no, how? Sorry.
Walk me through your process now. You have this total wrecked person sitting in front of you, and you're now going to take their hands and begin your 6 week journey, as you mentioned earlier.
So the 6 day intense. So, well, the first thing that I would say is I have good news and bad news. And
Hmm.
the the bad news is that I cannot fix you, and the good news is that you don't need to be fixed.
Yep.
That's um. So it really depends on what people need. But most of the people I work with now, we start with the 6 days where we sit together on Zoom for 60
Hmm.
to 90 minutes every day,
Nice.
and we have a conversation.
Hmm.
There's no homework,
Hmm.
there's no notes, there's
Hmm.
no stress. It's a conversation. Through that
Yeah.
conversation, something happens because we start to together explore what you're saying in a way that you for yourself, it's not me telling you, you for yourself at some point you see this conditioning, you see these patterns of thinking, and you become very aware of them. What
Mm-hmm.
I've seen is that I never know what's going to happen. People,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I had somebody come saying, I like that you talk about feeling at peace regardless of circumstances. I want more of that. So we started these 6 days of conversation, and halfway through, she changes her life. She talks to her boss, then she gets
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
completely, right? Because something else comes. I've had people come because they want to, free themselves. I don't know, some money conditioning, but then something deeper comes that they didn't realize they believed about themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know what's gonna happen out of that, but I know it's something that comes from you, comes from source, comes from
Yeah.
that person, and my job is to hold the space and
Mm-hmm.
gently guiding the conversation so that can emerge. So that's really the number one way. Some people, we then continue working together, even like I have clients for years, because then they like the support, they like to stay in the space, and they're
Mm-hmm.
building their business, they're in their new
Yeah.
career, right? So really, these are the two ways that I would approach somebody coming to me.
As messed up as I am, I'm sure of. I thank you. I
No,
want
because there's no,
to.
it's just, and my coach made a huge difference. I have a coach, and we've been working together for now over 4 years.
Yeah.
And he was instrumental because I would go with those things. I'm a mess, what's wrong with
Yeah.
me? Or I would go in a really bad mood, or saying things that are very uncharitable, like
Mm-hmm.
my worst self. And he never bought once that there was something wrong with me. It was
Yeah.
that loving acceptance, right?
Yes.
And that again, that let me see my own conditioning,
Yeah, that's the safe
you
space
know.
that we create, and we allow that, as you said earlier, we hold a space for them to get a chance to see who they are. And it is a beautiful honor that we do hold. And I count it a privilege and an honor when someone comes to sit down and to share their energy, and it is really beautiful. And so I want to thank you, Aurora, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. We can go on and on and on. I just love this conversation. And I want to thank you so much for sitting down and entrusting us with your life and the journey that you were and you had embarked on, and you placed that information in our hands and into our being, and we take it and we hold it and we hold the space. And we thank you so much for coming at our family, and I welcome you into our family, and I hope you stay, because I'm going to be bothering you a little more as we
Okay.
grow. So I want to thank you for coming truly, and it is my hope that you will be one of our guests that keeps coming back over and over again.
You can count on it, Ken, and I really want to thank you for all the work you do. It's a beautiful podcast, and I really love what you're committed to, and I feel it makes a difference for a lot of people. So really thank you. I feel it's been my honor to be on your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are, and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you, but always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe. And if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.